Welcome to Reagan and Friends, a podcast series hosted by the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. Each month we will share some behind-the-scenes moments and stories of President Reagan with some of his more famous friends. In this month's podcast, we present Walt Disney, a pioneer of the American animation industry, a film producer, a voice actor, and an entrepreneur. He is most known for creating cartoon characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, and for planning and building Disneyland in Los Angeles, California, and Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. The Disney company he founded became one of the world's largest entertainment conglomerates. Walt Disney was born on December 5, 1901, in Chicago, Illinois, as Walter Elias Disney. He was the fourth son of Elias Disney and Flora Call. He also had a sister. As a young child, he showed a taste and aptitude for drawing and painting, and by the age of 7, was selling sketches to neighbors. He officially began to study cartooning as a teenager with a correspondence school, and later took classes at the Kansas City Art Institute and School of Design. During World War I, a 16-year-old Walt Disney was an ambulance driver for the American Red Cross in France and Germany. His ambulance was covered from stem to stern, not with stock camouflage, but with drawings and cartoons. In 1919, at the age of 18, Walt met Ub Iwerks, a young artist. In 1922, the two started a small studio of their own. They animated advertising films for movie theaters and created 7-minute fairy tales of live action and animation. In 1923, Walt Disney moved to California and opened a new office in Hollywood with his brother Roy and with Ub Iwerks. In 1925, Walt married Lillian Bounds, and the two were blessed with 2 daughters. Just a few years later, in 1928, Walt and Ub created the cheerful, energetic, and mischievous animated mouse named Mickey. Their animated film, Steamboat Willie, was a huge hit, and by 1934, they were producing feature-length animated films, including Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. As the studio grew and their production increased, their crossover with Ronald Reagan began, when, in 1947, members of the House Un-American Activities Committee began to look into alleged communist influences in the film industry. Both Ronald Reagan and Walt Disney testified in front of the committee. Ronald Reagan testifying that a small clique of communists were attempting to be a disruptive influence within the Screen Actors Guild, and Walt Disney testifying that it was the communists who had been behind the 1941 strike at his studio. In 1955, Disneyland was launched. Walt Disney asked a few of his friends to co-host the opening, including Ronald Reagan, Bob Cummings, and Art Linkletter. The three co-hosted a 90-minute coast-to-coast live television broadcast on July 17, 1955. Walt Disney died on December 15, 1966. He did more to touch the hearts, minds, and emotions of millions of Americans than any other man in the past century. Through his work, he brought joy, happiness, and a universal means of communication to the people of every nation. At the time of Walt Disney's passing, Ronald Reagan was governor of California. Upon hearing the news of his friend's death, Governor Reagan recommended that a United States postage stamp be issued in his honor. In Governor Reagan's 1967 letter to the Postmaster General, he declared his feelings about his old friend by writing, "I hesitate to even mention California's pride in his vast accomplishments for fear of detracting from his true image as a world-renowned and world-beloved figure. There is no necessity for me to itemize his contributions to humanity. They can be summed up by simply saying that because of him, the world is a richer, better place." As President of the United States, President Reagan, as well as Mrs. Reagan, continued their relationship with the Walt Disney family, even receiving this fun drawing of Mickey Mouse saying hi to the president from Merle Gibson, one of the earliest Disney animators. In March of 1983, President Reagan visited Walt Disney World's Epcot Center.
I'm delighted to be here. I'm especially pleased to acknowledge the presence today of a group of students from 8 countries. They're participants in the World Showcase Fellowship Program, which Disney World has generously established as part of Epcot.
And in September of 1983, under President Reagan, Congress created the Commission on the Bicentennial of the Constitution to organize the commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the Constitution of the United States. President Reagan appointed the commission, which consisted of 23 members and was chaired by Warren Burger, who resigned his seat on the U.S. Supreme Court to undertake the duty. Disney World hosted the commission at a celebration in October of 1986 to kick off the bicentennial celebrations and to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Disney World. When Ronald Reagan was re-elected President of the United States in 1984, it was too cold to hold the regular inaugural parade and other planned events in January. Instead, he attended a second inaugural celebration at America Gardens at Epcot Center on May 27, 1985.
My friends, thank you again for the gift of this magnificent inaugural parade. May you enjoy all the blessings of a free and bountiful nation. And on this, the eve of the Second American Revolution, may you always remember the enduring truth that our tax plan seeks to embody and that Americans have cherished through the ages. God made man for liberty. Thank you all. God bless you. And now, let the parade begin.
Following that event, President and Mrs. Reagan were gifted this original color portrait of the event, which shows President and Mrs. Reagan with many of the Disney characters, which was a gift of Michael Eisner, the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. President Reagan was also gifted a pair of Mickey Mouse ears with a drawing of Mickey's face on the front and Mr. President embroidered on the back. Also in 1985, Ronald Reagan was named a member of the Disneyland Alumni Club. The signatory on the certificate? None other than Mickey Mouse himself. In December of 1986, President Reagan proclaimed December 5th as Walt Disney Recognition Day, writing in the proclamation, "Walt Disney's true drawing table was the imagination. His themes were virtues like courage and hope, and his audience was composed of young people, in years or at heart, who, through the creations of this American genius, found new ways to laugh, to cry, and to just plain appreciate the simple bare necessities of life." In May of 1987, President Reagan sent a note to Roy Disney and his wife Patty after they received the Variety Club's Big Heart Community Achievement Award. In the letter he wrote, "Our nation has a proud heritage of men and women who give generously of their time, talent, and material resources to help their neighbor. You exemplify the best in this tradition." The connection with the Walt Disney name continued well into their time in the White House. In June of 1988, Mrs. Reagan held a foster grandparent program at Walt Disney World and even helped Mickey Mouse celebrate his birthday. And later, in October of that year, President Reagan evoked the name of Walt Disney when he invited the United States Olympics team to the White House.
I want to welcome all of you to the White House today as we honor and welcome home our victorious summer Olympic team. You know, with so many successful athletes here, I kind of expect a camera crew from Walt Disney to run up and ask me what I plan to do next.
In 1990, Ronald Reagan returned to Disneyland for its 35th anniversary. He returned with his co-MCs from the 1955 opening, Art Linkletter and Bob Cummings. In our archives is both a Steamboat Willie trophy thanking President Reagan for sharing in Disney's 35 years of magic, as well as his Grand Marshal sign. When President Reagan's office was cleaned out after his passing in 2004, this Mr. President name tag was found in a desk drawer from Disneyland's 40th anniversary. Even after both Walt Disney and President Reagan had passed, our two organizations continued to share their legacy and their friendship. In 2012, the Reagan Library hosted a 12,000 square foot exhibition entitled D23 Presents Treasures from the Walt Disney Archives. The exhibition showcased more than 500 Disney artifacts, many publicly displayed for the first time, from nearly 90 years of Disney history. The exhibition opened on July 4, 2012, with a grand opening ceremony hosted by Mrs. Ronald Reagan and the Disney Company CEO, Bob Iger. Also in attendance for the program, none other than Mickey and Minnie Mouse. Walt Disney and Ronald Reagan were two eternal optimists who shared a belief in the essential goodness of the American way of life. Thank you for watching.
Don't forget that when you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll be notified every time new videos and podcasts are added to our site, including our Reagan and Friends, Words to Live By, and Reagan Forum podcasts. And don't forget to follow @Ronald Reagan on Facebook and Twitter, as well as @Reagan Foundation on Instagram and YouTube.